You know, one thing is for sure, every time Nate Diaz steps foot in the octagon, an offensive war is about to go down. It's not over until he hasn't demeaned, demoralized, and intimidated his opponent, and this is exactly what makes him such a huge fan favorite. Today, we'll be showing you some of the craziest bouts and top finishers of the Stockton representative that are nothing short of aesthetic gifts from the MMA gods. Starting off with Nate Diaz versus Kurt Pellegrino. Although Diaz has won several submission matches in his professional career, his comeback victory over Kurt Pellegrino in 2008 has to be the most memorable. Everyone who watched him on The Ultimate Fighter's 5th season was well aware of the Stockton native's aggressive attitude, but in just his 4th fight in the promotion, viewers who didn't watch the reality show got a sneak peek of it. He was faced with Kurt Pellegrino's popular stylistic challenge. Apart from being a skilled wrestler, the Batman also held a highly respected black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was intimidating and super experienced compared to the younger Nate, but our Stockton bad boy didn't care about all those fancy titles. Even though he lost the first round, he wasn't giving up so soon. In fact, he even performed a judo throw on his opponent. When Pellegrino returned the favor with a slam, Nate shocked him by locking him up in a flawless triangle choke, and it was now clear that Pellegrino was in deep trouble, and this was no rookie. The legend killer then gave the UFC fans an image that would define him for a long time when he flexed at his opponent and then flipped him off just as he submitted. To say that it must have embarrassed Kurt would be an understatement. It was typical of Diaz fare, a rare combination of skill and attitude. Nate still views the fight with Pellegrino as a turning point in his career because it's the only match that proved he was ready to be an A-level player for the major leagues. Next up, Nate Diaz versus Marcus Davis. When the bout first started, both fighters immediately started swinging and testing the waters, with Davis getting the upper hand by dropping his opponent. They continued to exchange blows, and Davis was landing the harder shots, while Nate was more productive due to his long reach. As the fight went on, Davis's right eye was clearly affecting his performance, and Diaz's accuracy was getting better with each shot he threw. Marcus, being the smaller fighter, found it tough to get close to his taller opponent and make an impact, as Nate soon began to pick him apart ruthlessly from a distance and with accuracy. When the third round started, Davis was clearly exhausted and continued to take even more damage near his right eye, which is when Diaz started experimenting with his strikes, and it didn't take very long for him to end things. As soon as the third round ended, Marcus was put to sleep by a guillotine that Nate set up after scoring a takedown and maintaining a good hold on him while working from half guard. The whole bout was a sight to behold, and this is why the Stockton representative received a Fight of the Night bonus for this contest. Now, Diaz versus Michael Johnson. When Nate returned to the UFC to fight Michael Johnson in late 2015, people weren't very sure about his future. He hadn't made any appearances in the UFC, let alone win, for a year or two. Rafael dos Anjos had previously dismantled him in a fight, thrashing the Stockton slugger with leg kicks and even landing the better blows. And Johnson intended to do the same. He won the first round of the bout by using his super quick footwork and landing leg kicks, exactly as Dos Anjos had done. But in the second round, Nate upped the ante by pressuring Johnson with his boxing skills and, more importantly, by taunting the menace. As soon, Johnson fell right into his opponent's trap. He grew enraged and tried to fight fire with fire. Any technical advantage he might have had before this was lost immediately when he decided to spar with Diaz, whose long reach allowed him to land far more impactful blows. By the end of the second round, it was obvious that Nate had the advantage. He continued to thrash Johnson in the third round and even tried to knee bar him after the final buzzer to add insult to injury. This was a humiliating defeat for Johnson because he not only lost to someone who hadn't fought in a year, but also because he lost a fight that he was apparently winning, all because he let his trash-talking opponent get to his head. Up next, Nate Diaz versus Gray Maynard. Maynard's fighting style is the perfect embodiment of his nickname, the Bully, because boy, does he bully his opponents around the cage with his strong wrestling base and commanding ground control with strength that would make even Hercules envious. But trilogy bouts have never been kind to him. After trading victories and defeats on The Ultimate Fighter, the two fought for the third time in the finale to finally settle their 2007 rivalry. Knowing what was at stake, Diaz came out with a lot of confidence. Maynard began by using his right hand to close the distance between him and his tall opponent before successfully scoring a single leg takedown. But things were much less straightforward on the floor because Maynard was unable to keep Nate under control. The first time they faced off as tough competitors, Diaz had Maynard in a submission, but this time he was okay with simply wrestling him to his feet. Following a quick escape from the ensuing clinch, he delivered a straight left to bring Maynard to his knees, but the 34-year-old former #1 contender leapt right back up, and then the pride of Stockton thrashed the daylights out of him while moving from one end of the cage to the other. Maynard, who was clearly injured at this point, barely managed to keep his hands up defensively and never really attempted a takedown to slow the pace. He was so ruthless clueless that after the scoring games winning 1-2, the referee luckily intervened and stopped Nate from more attacks. Moving on to Nate Diaz versus Takanori Gomi. His dominance is what we remember the most about this match. Gomi is one of the most renowned fighters in MMA history and a legend in the lightweight division, but the Stockton bad boy was able to make him look like an absolute rookie. Even though Takanori is regarded as a particularly dangerous striker, Nate was able to throw punches at will throughout the first round, occasionally taunting him. When Gomi attempted to take the fight to the ground, it nearly appeared as though Diaz would allow him to get it before going for an instant triangle choke. He was unstoppable for Gomi on the feet, and a flawless jiu-jitsu performance was simply too much for the former Pride champion. Gomi was pounded on the outside due to his opponent's 6-inch reach advantage, and then Nate quickly changed from a triangle attempt to an armbar to end the fight once the action hit the ground, adding yet another spectacular win to the list of his flawless victories. Next up, Nate versus McGregor at UFC 196. Early on, McGregor had the quicker hands and immediately opened a cut around Diaz's right eye, causing it to bleed heavily, and then came the second round. This one was a bit unique. Obviously, Nate wasn't going to be fazed by a lot of blood, even if it was his own. He managed to land one of his signature 1-2 combinations during an exchange. The right cross that completed the combo landed on the tip of McGregor's chin, and things began to go downhill from that point. At 170 pounds, McGregor definitely wore out more quickly, while Diaz picked up the pace and started landing combinations with ease. The featherweight champion was being rocked, and McGregor's infamous left-hand shots were being deflected by Diaz like so many three-leaf clovers. And it was his game once the action had settled to the ground. McGregor quickly transitioned to full mount, rolled, and gave up his back. But Nate locked on the choke, and the rest, as they say, is history. Finally, Diaz versus Donald Cerrone. You must watch Nate's fight with the super badass Donald Cerrone at UFC 141. If you want to see a man lose his composure mid-fight and transform into the monster he thought of himself to be as a fistic duel unfolds. Without a doubt, Cerrone is a top-ranked A-class fighter. Not to mention, he was riding on a 6-fight winning streak before his bout with Nate. But the top-tier foe appeared to be an MMA newbie lost in the sea of brutal violence thanks to Nate Diaz. The first round of the fight spoke volumes about why most fighters should avoid engaging in emotional combat. Standing directly in front of Diaz, a furious Cerrone swung for the fences while absorbing punch after punch. He was bloodied and battered when the bell rang. After Diaz won the opening round decisively, Cowboy Cerrone calmed down and used his entire toolkit of Muay Thai striking and head movement in the second round. But sadly, the former WECT title contender, the harm had already been done. Nate had won on each of the 3 scorecards, moving to the highest echelons of the division. What a fight that was. And that's a wrap for this video. Which Nate Diaz finish is your favorite? Comment below and let us know. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.